It is the morning of August 24th, 79 AD, and in Pompeii, 20,000 people are going about their ordinary lives. Merchants are arranging wine amphorae in the forum. Children are chasing dogs through alleyways. And somewhere, a baker is sliding fresh bread into a stone oven. No one knows that in a few hours, every single one of them will be dead. Mount Vesuvius had been rumbling for days, small tremors, strange sounds from underground, but eruptions were not yet part of Roman scientific understanding. At approximately 1 p.m., the mountain exploded, sending a column of ash and rock 33 kilometers into the sky. What happened next was not one disaster. It was 6 distinct waves, each one more lethal than the last. For the first 2 hours, the sky simply rained down pumice stones, and that is when the first decisions were made. In the House of the Golden Bracelet, 4 people gathered together, and for 150 years, we assumed we knew exactly who they were. Archaeologists believed they were looking at a wealthy mother holding her infant son, accompanied by 2 servants. In 2024, DNA analysis shattered that story completely. The adult in the bracelet was a man, and none of the 4 were biologically related. 4 strangers, perhaps neighbors, perhaps passers-by, chose in their final moments to hold each other rather than die alone. In the Garden of the Fugitives, 13 people were running, and we know exactly where they were going. They were heading for the Nocera Gate, the southern exit of the city, but the pyroclastic surge caught them in the open. Among them was a woman whose skeleton showed she had recently given birth. She was still recovering when the mountain took her. The youngest victim ever recovered from Pompeii was just 12 months old. Her teeth tell us her exact age. But here is the part no one tells you: some Pompeii victims were not killed by the volcano at all. Some died of suffocation from toxic gas hours before the pyroclastic surge even reached the city walls. In the house of the Cryptoporticus, 2 adults were found clutching each other, and science assumed they were lovers. DNA revealed they were 2 young people, 1 male, and had no romantic or family connection whatsoever. They were strangers who reached for another human being in the dark, because that is what people do when the world ends. In a street near the Forum, archaeologists found a man who had been counting coins when he died, his hand still frozen in the act. He had 40 sestertii, roughly 2 weeks' wages for a laborer, and he had been trying to gather them quickly when the surge hit. He was not rich. He was trying to save what little he had, and that detail has haunted archaeologists for decades. In the gladiator barracks near the amphitheater, 18 men were found dead, still chained inside their cells. Most were slaves, property of the arena, and they had no key, no way out, and no one who came to free them. Among them was a woman. She wore gold jewelry and silk, and no one has ever explained what a wealthy Roman woman was doing in a gladiator cell. The gladiator barracks were not the most disturbing discovery. That distinction belongs to a man found climbing the wall of a building. He had climbed 4 meters above street level, trying to outrun the rising pumice, and he almost made it. He was the last person to die in that building. The pumice level in the rooms below tells us everyone else had already gone. In August 2024, archaeologists uncovered 2 more victims, a man and a woman, found in a bedroom, being used as a temporary shelter. The house was under renovation. The main rooms were full of construction materials, so they had taken refuge in the only clean room left. The woman was found on the bed, and in her arms she held gold earrings, silver coins, and a pair of pearl earrings she had clearly just grabbed in a panic. The bedroom window had been closed, which is why the room survived relatively intact, and which is why we know their story at all. Across the bay, a 5-6-year-old Roman naval commander and naturalist watched the eruption from his ship and made the most remarkable decision of the day. Pliny the Elder ordered his fleet not away from the disaster, but directly toward it to rescue survivors trapped on the shore. He made scientific notes the entire way, describing the eruption cloud as shaped like an umbrella pine tree, while people on shore fled in terror. He never made it back. Pliny the Elder died on the beach at Stabii, likely of a heart attack triggered by the toxic gases. His nephew, Pliny the Younger, watched from across the bay and wrote the only eyewitness account we have of the entire eruption. Here is what Pliny the Younger wrote, and it reads like it was written yesterday. He described the cloud as rising on a long trunk like a pine tree. The sea pulled back, and the sky turned black at noon. At approximately 1 a.m. on August 25th, 12 hours after the eruption began, the volcanic column collapsed. What followed was a pyroclastic surge, a wave of gas and ash traveling at 700 kilometers per hour at 500 degrees Celsius. It hit Herculaneum first, the smaller town just 2 kilometers from the volcano, and everyone still there died within 4 seconds. The bone collagen studies tell us they did not burn. The heat was so sudden and complete that they simply stopped existing as living organisms. In Pompeii, the surge arrived at around 6:30 a.m. By then, thousands had already fled, but thousands had stayed. Those who had sheltered indoors believing the walls would protect them died exactly where they had chosen to hide. For 17 centuries, they lay buried forgotten beneath 4 to 6 meters of volcanic rock, and the city above them was built and rebuilt without anyone knowing. In 1748, workers building a palace for the King of Naples broke through the ground and found a painted wall, and Pompeii began to resurface. But it was 1863 before archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli realized the hollow spaces in the ash were not empty. They were shaped exactly like human beings. He poured liquid plaster of Paris into a cavity, and when it hardened and the ash was carefully removed, a Roman man emerged from the dust as he had been in 79 AD. Over 104 plaster casts have been made, but archaeologists estimate there are still up to 2,000 human voids remaining underground, still waiting. The most iconic cast, the man sometimes called the Crouching Man, died trying to cover his face with his cloak. Another man died with his hands pressed over his ears, suggesting the noise of the surge was the last sensation he tried to block out. A dog was found, still chained to a post. Its collar bore the inscription, "Cave Canem, beware of the dog." He had been trying to climb on top of himself as the pumice rose curling upward before the surge ended everything. For 160 years, archaeologists built human stories from visual assumptions, and most of those stories were wrong. The 2024 DNA study from Harvard, the Max Planck Institute, and the University of Florence changed everything we thought we knew. What they found in the DNA told a completely different story about who Pompeii's people actually were. The majority of Pompeii's citizens were descendants of Eastern Mediterranean immigrants. Pompeii was far more diverse than anyone had imagined. And the man everyone called the mother, the figure in the golden bracelet holding a child, was a man of African genetic origin, holding a child he had never met before that day. In the same eruption, the nearby town of Herculaneum was buried, and with it, an entire library of 800 rolled papyrus scrolls. For 1,900 years, those scrolls sat underground, too fragile to open, until a team of researchers used artificial intelligence to read them without unrolling them. Inside was a text by an Epicurean philosopher writing about music, food, and the pleasures of life, just days before Vesuvius took everything. There is a detail in the record that does not get enough attention. Thousands of Pompeii's citizens survived because they ran early. Those who died were those who waited, who chose to shelter in place, or who went back for their possessions. The woman found in the bedroom clutching her jewelry had made that calculation. The jewelry was worth returning for. We cannot call her wrong. She survived long enough to reach the bed, to close the window, to hold what she loved closest to her body. When archaeologists excavated Pompeii's bakery district, they found 81 loaves of bread still in the ovens, preserved and carbonized, exactly where they had been slid in that morning. A fast food restaurant, a thermopolium, was found with food still in the serving pots, duck bones, fish, snails, lentils. A political campaign sign was found painted on a wall endorsing a candidate for local office in an election that was never held. And in one house, the mosaic entry floor reads simply, "Salve, welcome," still greeting visitors who enter 1,946 years later. In 2020, scientists matched a skull found on the Herculaneum beach to Pliny the Elder, confirming he died exactly where his nephew said he did. The isotope analysis of victims' teeth tells us where they were born, and many had traveled from as far as modern-day Spain and North Africa just to live in Pompeii. Pompeii was not just a Roman city, it was one of the most cosmopolitan places on Earth in the 1st century AD. And 2/3 of it is still buried, including all the public records, all the personal letters, all the wills and contracts. Every one of the plaster casts was a person who woke up that morning thinking they would go to bed that night. They had names, arguments, favorites at the Thermopolium, people they loved and people they owed money to. The DNA doesn't give us their names, but it gives us something more honest. Proof that what we thought we knew about them was almost always wrong. The man in the golden bracelet was not a wealthy mother, but he held a child who was not his until the end, and that is a story worth knowing. Pompeii did not preserve the tragedy of a city. It preserved the last choices of 20,000 individuals, each one different, each one human. And as long as we keep looking, keep asking who they really were, they are not entirely gone.